Just before I hand over to Lois, just a couple of words from me. Delighted to be able to sort of be part of this group this afternoon to hear about why warm spaces matter. It's an area that's very close to the LIN's heart, both in terms of the work with Clarion Futures and Clarion Housing, but also more broadly in terms of at a public policy level in relation to things like how we can support dealing with winter pressures and reduce some of the demand on our acute and primary care health services. In addition to that, we know that cold and unsafe and cold homes cost the NHS about £540 million a year, according to research by the Building Research Establishment. So we know there's both a financial reason why we should get our homes right, but also we know it has a real importance for delivering better outcomes for individuals. And that's why we're going to focus on this particular project this afternoon. It's also something that the Older Persons Housing Task Force took up in its sort of recommendations, thinking about how can we create more age-friendly and inclusive design to ensure that we have warm and affordable warm spaces. But enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Lois so she can do the introductions, and we'll look forward to hearing from all the presentations. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. And yeah, hello everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name's Lois Beach. I'm the consultancy and partnership manager at HousingLIN, and I had the great pleasure of working with Claire and her team at Clarion to evaluate the what was called warm spaces, and is now, I believe, wellbeing spaces programme. So really delighted to be able to kind of share with you the outcomes of that evaluation and kind of what Clarion have been doing today. So in terms of our speakers, first up we've got Claire Renison, who's community manager as part of the community assets and placemaking team at Clarion Futures. She's going to be giving us a kind of overview of Clarion's approach to developing wellbeing spaces, and thinking about why it matters to Clarion, and kind of giving a bit of guidance as to how others can implement it. Then we're going to hear from Sam Kirby, who's the Warm Space Programme lead at Sutton Centre in Bradford, on a sort of good news story, so kind of how the wellbeing space and warm space within Bradford has been developed, and what impact it's really had on the people there. And then finally, Hannah Wicks, our research officer at the HousingLIN, who was really embedded in the evaluation, visited I think 10 or so schemes. Will give an overview of the evaluation that we did for the project, so on the sort of social and financial impacts of the project. So yeah, it's really happy to be a part of this, as where we live and the communities that we live in are so sort of crucial to our health and well-being, and it's really great to have been involved with a housing provider that really cares about that aspect of their delivery of homes, but also of the sort of well-being of their residents and their communities as well. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Claire. So over to you, Claire.
Thanks, Lois. It's great to be here. Let me share my screen so we can get the presentation up. Can you all see that okay? You can, yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fabulous. Right. Okay, so you can all see the presentation. It's really great to be here and talk about Clarion Futures' approach to warm spaces. My name's Claire Renison. I'm the communities manager, as Lois just said, for Clarion Futures, for community assets and placemaking. My main role is to oversee the Clarion's 45 community assets, which are dotted across the country from Leeds and Bradford down to London, and actually as far south as Plymouth. So each asset is located in the heart of Clarion communities and is a different size and shape. So no two community spaces are the same. We support our community partners to create vibrant and welcoming spaces that are open to the whole community, not just to Clarion residents. So I'm going to start by explaining why we first started community spaces, why we first started warm spaces, the linked cost of living, and briefly take you through how we ended up with the current model of our wellbeing spaces, how it's kind of transformed to that. I'll give you some examples of the impact of the project, but as we have one of our amazing delivery partners, Sam Kirby from the Sutton Centre later, I won't go into that too much. And I also will touch on various points in the evaluation, but again, we'll leave that to Hannah a bit later as well. So how it all started. Just jumping ahead of myself a little bit. Oh, sorry, just let's just restart that. was just jumping ahead of myself a little bit too much there. Okay. Right, so the Warm Spaces grant programme was set up during the autumn of 2022 to support residents and community asset partners during the cost of living crisis. We wanted to offer Clarion residents and the local community a warm, welcoming, safe place to go during the cold winter months without the need to book in advance and without any stigma attached to why they're there. In other words, we wanted to create spaces that people chose to go to, not because they had to go to. So that was really important for me when putting this together originally. They should feel comfortable to just walk through the door, sit down, read a paper with a hot drink, join in activities. Our community partners were also having a bit of a difficult time, especially after COVID, and during that time they had to close their doors quite a lot. So now the energy bills were rising, it meant that they were in danger of not being able to open up on a daily basis, as covering these costs were just becoming more and more difficult. So this grant was to support our community partners as well as residents and the wider communities they live in. And the aim was to create spaces where residents can start to build new friendships and help to prevent social isolation and loneliness. So in year one, by providing direct grants to community partners during the winter of 2022 to 2023, Clarion Futures were able to fund 28 warm spaces right across the country. There was over 10,000 footfall and 212 referrals to specialist support services. Many partners used some of their funding to give out some free warm space items, and we encourage that. Some of those items were things like socks and hats and gloves, electric blankets and slow cookers. So there was a variety. It wasn't essential at this point in the grant. However, it did lead us to how we changed the programme a little bit later. So a basic evaluation was completed at the end of the winter, and this gave us the evidence to show how essential the project was to both community partners, but also to the wider community. With Clarion Futures support, we decided to continue the project using social value funding from Travis Perkins, and also a fantastic opportunity to come up with some external funding to double the amount of warm spaces, and also to offer a really good warm pack offer, which transformed the whole of the project. So in year two, we funded 53 warm spaces. And on average, the key thing I think to note here is that on average, 62% of warm space participants were over the age of 55 years, showing that there's a real need for spaces, in particular for old people. We had a flexible approach to warm pack items, which included electric blankets, slow cookers, air fryers, draft excluders, heating timers, room thermometers. But the flexibility was that we could swap and chop and change, and partners were able to do that, which was really beneficial. So a number of things helped us to shape this year's programme. The main evaluation from HousingLIN, which gave us a thorough understanding of what worked and what we were able to improve, but more about that from Hannah. Clarion takes a rigorous approach to the way it monitors and analyses the needs of its communities. Each year, we conduct a comprehensive survey of 2,000 residents called the Index, and that dives deeply into the key issues and community priorities. And I think that there should be a link in the chat to access that in a bit more detail and look at that data. But understanding the data that was collected throughout the year and being able to analyse it with honest communication from our funders, or with our funders, Rothsay Foundation, was extremely helpful to make some of the key changes that we then made. Key strengths, working group partners, knowing their communities, good flexibility of the grant, can be adapted according to the need and size and delivery of the space. Efficient internal grants teams, that was pulled up as a really good strength. But from studying all of this, we were able to come up with a number of opportunities for this year's delivery and the need to continue this valuable project. So with increased funding from Rothsay and from Clarion Futures, we have been able to do that this year. The model and aims of the programme have stayed very similar, but we've expanded to a year-round offer with a change of name to Wellbeing Spaces, which enables a bigger focus on companionship, preventing social isolation and loneliness. We plan to develop the working group further, led by the new Wellbeing Programme Coordinator, who starts next week, which is fantastic news. They'll be leading on how-to guides, sharing best practice, leading the evaluation and the learning. They'll look at a celebration event and a new pilot on how we can incorporate a welfare benefits offer, but we'll be working very closely with the Rothsay Foundation on that. Having a flexible approach or a flexible offer enables each wellbeing space to be different and to ensure the needs of the local community are met. This means that no two warm spaces or wellbeing spaces are the same. So there are lots of reasons why this worked well. Flexibility and communication from funders, strong working group who know their partners well, continued support from Rothsay and Travis Perkins, a thorough internal grants team who really understood the challenges, partner autonomy to design their spaces to fit the need, utilising community assets well, that helped with engagement, and having a great internal comms team that picked up on good news stories and publicised the spaces. This includes an article in Inside Housing, and again, there should be a link to that in the chat. Impact measurement, we looked at the age profile of visitors accessing the spaces, the overall level of footfall, the type and number of wellbeing items that are being distributed and how that affected people, and the benefits for that, levels of volunteering activity, referrals to external support services. And some of the key outcomes we found were reducing loneliness, reducing isolation, reducing spending on energy and food bills, increasing healthy eating, physical health, mental health, sense of belonging, sense of purpose, and access to welfare benefits advice. An unexpected outcome, which is really exciting, is that as the Warm Spaces was part of the Clarion's cost of living offer to residents, that whole offer has been told or have been up for an award for the Travis Perkins Better Together Awards, which is really exciting. So what next? Maximum impact and add value by working across Clarion Futures and Clarion Housing teams, but keeping the flexibility of the programme, looking at integrating other external specialist organisations, further evaluation to look at how this can become business as usual, but also how we can influence other local authorities and housing associations to do this, to have a similar offer, and to look at strategic implications of how this programme can influence policy and decision makers. That would be really good to look at. I've got a few quotes, don't know how I'm doing on time, but got a couple of quotes, one from Helen Ives-Rose, who's the Deputy Chief Exec of Communities First in Boreham Wood. They have 4 spaces there. And the first line here, for local people, this wellbeing space is so much more than just a place to keep warm. It's a place where they can meet new people and forge new friendships, as well as trying out all sorts of fun activities. And there's also one from Ira Gibson as well. And then we've got the final bit are some quotes from participants. So lots of things. The space is valued by many people, has helped create friendships, very informative, relaxed atmosphere. I never felt welcome going to other groups, but I love it here. It's a special touch. We're able to sit down and eat together rather than taking our food home to eat alone. Many others, but I know that these are going to be shared, so you'll get to see all of them. So thanks for this amazing opportunity to talk to you all about warm spaces and wellbeing spaces. As you can see, I'm really passionate about taking this further, so please let me know if you can help or if you're interested to do something similar. And on the final slide is just the new programme coordinator, Sarah Manley, and myself, and the details there. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Claire. And yeah, really great to see that there's now a dedicated kind of programme coordinator for the project. Obviously shows the sort of success and how well it's been going. Yeah, and also really great to see that development, I guess, to wellbeing spaces throughout the whole year, because I think key to our findings was that it wasn't just about kind of being physically warm and using the space for that purpose. Actually, the kind of what overshone that was kind of how people used it for, you know, connecting with other people and connecting with other services as well. So yeah, really, really fab that it's now a kind of full year round offer for local people. Okay, I will hand over to Sam, and we're going to do questions and answers at the end of the session. So if anyone's got any questions they want to put in the Q&A box, then please, you know, feel free to do so as we go along. But I will hand over to you, Sam. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Right, I'll just give us a minute. I will share my screen with you, so hopefully you can see the presentation if that's worked for you.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for your time. I'm representing the Sutton Centre. We're a community centre based in Bradford. We manage one of Clarion House's community assets. I'll just give you a quick overview of us and who we are, and then I'll talk a little bit about our learning. I feel like Claire's stolen some of our presentation, even though we haven't planned it together, which is great that we're on the same track. So yeah, so for us as a centre, our mission is all around supporting healthy community. We do that for all ages, and the warm space is fed perfectly to help us bring things together and extend our support. Our aims as a centre were about improving health, increasing wealth, and building community. So for health, we've got a wide range of projects improving residents' physical and mental health. Around increasing wealth, we're always interested in how we can help people access welfare advice, access support with jobs and training, and where possible, help them save money, which again, the warm spaces fits both of them. And we do all this through by building community, creating connection points where communities and people can come together all under one space. So for us, the warm spaces just ticked all of our aims. So when it came out, it was no surprise, I think, to Clarion that we responded to a call to open our services for longer. So our journey with warm space began when Clarion first opened it in October 22. When we saw the cost of living crisis, we saw residents' bills increasing, we saw our own bills increasing. But we recognised that in the midst of the business centre that we had spaces that we could still open up to residents. That was open access with warm drinks, with snacks, breakfast in the morning. So we did that between Monday and Friday, and our cafe space was open for that. We had our kettle available constantly. We had people using our Wi-Fi, people using our electric for charging their phones. We provided a computer for people to access where needed. And then we recognised, and speaking to residents, we realised that all services worked Monday to Friday, and that the weekend was where families were dreading this long period of lack of services. All people recognised that there was no support. So we trialled opening Sunday evenings 4 till 8 p.m. With various degrees of success. The northern weather impacted massively on some of that. And then we repeated it in 2023, where Sundays we made it a real connection point for families. We had families coming together. We did it where they learned to cook low-value meals, where we sourced meals from our local market. We gave them the contacts, we gave them the recipes, and tried bringing families where we ended up with 20, 30 people on Sunday nights. But then through the extended offer from Clarion, we were able to offer warm packs for older residents, which again ranged from providing thermal flasks that kept soup or meals warm, to blankets, heated blankets, draft excluders, a wide range that we could identify the needs of the residents, from slow cookers to smaller slow cookers. Clarion really gave us the freedom to kind of go, this is the basic offer, but make it fit the individuals. And that was key for us, that it wasn't prescriptive, but it was responsive to residents' needs. And then we, through other streams, we then started the whole signposting, making sure that it wasn't just you coming to keep warm, but actually how do we impact you when you leave? So we made sure that we had access to welfare advice through Clarion's welfare team. We then brokered support from elsewhere for our offer through the week. We've got a food pantry that the Clarion Housing supported, and food hampers, and through some household support fund as well. We added value to make sure that we could help residents save money in one area, which then when they weren't in the warm space, they could create their own warm space at home, and really looked at where we could increase value, increase wealth in houses. We had all sorts of ages come along. We had different events, from film nights to family bingo nights, family quizzes, old people's meals. We tried to make sure we had a wide range of offers to make sure we had different ages access to the provision throughout the week. I want to give you a couple of case studies of how over the last couple of years the warm space has really made a difference. So in Christmas 2022, we had our warm space running, and we had a local older gentleman who'd accessed bits of support at the centre, and we were making sure, because he didn't come across to the centre, he only lives directly opposite us, we'd use that time to go check in on him on a weekend, on a Sunday. We went to visit him one Sunday just before Christmas, to find that he'd not had any carers come visit, and we actually found him unresponsive in his house, and turning blue. it turns out he'd not had his carers, he'd got a chest infection. We managed to call an ambulance. He thankfully became responsive. He's still with us today. But that, for us, that was a real value of the warm space and staff being available out of hours above and beyond our normal programme. I did see that we have got some people from public health and from the health sector. Our costs that day were about £40 for us for the hour that we spent with that gentleman, plus an ambulance call out where he didn't go into hospital was around you could say from the figures back then was worth around £217. So we probably costed altogether, including a health intervention, of 257 quid. The last time that gentleman went into hospital when he had a chest infection, he was there for 10 days, which, depending on what costings you use, is roughly around £4,000 to the health system. So you can see by having that one intervention from ourselves, which cost 40 quid, plus the ambulance, you're going, there's a significant saving for health in investing in warm spaces. And then last year we had our family evenings, and we had a good group of families coming up every single week. And we planned a party. We were opening up on a Sunday night, so it was New Year's Eve. So that was going to be our New Year's Eve party. But tragically, there was a car accident on Boxing Day involving one of our local families that attended our warm space. And one of the little girls tragically lost her life on Boxing Day. And that, sorry, I might get a bit emotional. That ripped apart our community. That was a real shock. Really affected all ages. Obviously, we had children that had lost their friend. We had the family grieving, and we were the only space open during that Christmas period because of the warm spaces. We cancelled. We stayed open, but we decided that it wasn't appropriate to be our New Year's Eve party. But instead, as staff, we provided support. We created space for children to write their memories. We lit a candle. We let parents talk through their grief, talk through what the impact was, and we celebrated the little girl's life. And we never planned on that, and without that support, our families would have had 2 weeks of just grief with nowhere to turn. I'd like to think it made it a little bit easier on families. It was an unexpected outcome of the warm space. Obviously, for us, it's something we hope we never have to experience as a community. But again, that was a relatively low cost for an intervention that made a huge difference to our community and to our residents, and really changed our viewpoint of it being a warm space to this wellbeing space, that it was much more than just providing a place that's got heating, cups of tea, hot chocolate and food, but actually being a place where residents can share their journey, share their hurts, share their celebrations, but where they can come together and find mutual support, not only with professionals, but with other residents. So when we talk about our wellbeing space going forward, and our centre of using the warm space that now becoming the wellbeing spaces, these are kind of my 3 things and 3 tips of success that have helped us achieve what we've been able to achieve through the warm space. Clarion, in the first year, were very open to us investing in spaces. And I always talk about our kettle. So we've got a water boiler that's on constantly. I dread to think how many cups of tea it makes per day. But being able to invest and have that freedom to invest in our centre, invest in our gas bills when our gas bills went, but having that freedom to recognise that people deserve quality, and they're not leaving one cold area to go into another cold area that's just a community building, but actually somewhere that reflects quality, that respects them being valued, and creates a space of belonging. But practically, that also needs industrial equipment. It needs to be a warm, welcome space. And through Clarion support, we've been investing in a good kettle and plenty of Yorkshire tea bags that are available for the community. But it's a place where people want to belong. We had our old people's group this morning, finished at 11:30. Couldn't get rid of them till 1:30 because they were sharing cake and celebrating someone's birthday. And people just turn up and they just want to stay. which is fantastic. But I think that shows the investment from Clarion and from ourselves of people belong here and they're comfortable. I did also get a nice piece of cake, so there is some bonuses to allowing that happen. So I did turn a blind eye from sticking around till half one. Investment in partnerships, we're only a small team. There's 7 of us that are part-time. So we can't be all things to all people. But by being able to use our warm space and being able to invest in partnerships and bring professionals alongside us, we've been able to achieve so much more. And this is our third point. Our theory of change is all around brokering support, recognising that we're experts in connecting with the community. Doesn't mean we're experts in everything else, but bringing people alongside that journey, whether it's Clarion's Housing's Jobs and Training, whether it's their Money Matters team, whether it's the local family hub, by brokering, that's what we can offer so much more. But it all starts with them community spaces at them points of connection. So yeah, that's my 3 little bits of how you can create your own warm spaces and make them a successful communities. So I'll leave that there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam. And yeah, some really, really powerful stories there, just kind of reminding us of the kind of value of like community spaces, and also I guess like the touch points that you create for people, particularly also like great the breadth and range of activities that you're providing and how those are like responding to the needs of the community. Just really, really fantastic. So yeah, thank you for kind of sharing your experience in the warm space or wellbeing program. Well, I'm going to hand over to Hannah, who's our excellent research officer at the HousingLIN, and she's going to give us an overview of the evaluation that the HousingLIN and actually mainly Hannah led on. So I'll hand over to you, Hannah.
Thank you, Lois. And yes, thank you, Claire and Sam, for your great presentations. I probably will be touching on some similar stuff, so you can see mine as a bit of a summary if you like. But yeah, my name is Hannah Wicks and I'm the research officer at the HousingLIN. I led on the evaluation of the Warm Space project, and it was something that I really enjoyed being a part of. I've realised I haven't shared my screen. 1 second.
No worries, it's just sharing now.
Can you see that now? No,
yeah, you just want to make it full screen and then good to go. Yeah.
From the beginning, there we go. Okay, so in the next 5 to 10 minutes, I'm just going to go over the methodology and evaluation approach that the HousingLIN took in our evaluation and showcase some of the key kind of warm space benefits, both social and financial. So a little bit more about the Clarion Housing warm spaces, although Claire's given a nice kind of background to it all. But I guess, yeah, from my observations, they were a place where people could come together, usually over a cup of tea, and they provided a range of services and signposted to sources of advice and support on issues such as housing, health, education, money management, benefits, digital skills, and access to food banks. I particularly observed warm spaces using their communities to put on events like kids clubs, crafts clubs, and live music, which was really nice as well, as it really brought their communities together. In 2023, Clarion Futures received funding from the Rothsay Foundation to deliver an extended warm space programme, and this included the distribution of warm packs, which are essential items to support people to keep warm and save money over the winter months. So these are the main warm spaces that I visited. As you can see, there is Bradford on there, which is Sam's warm space. And that was really great to go and visit. And I definitely got a sense of the community there and how much people valued the warmth, but also, you know, the community and the food. So yeah, it was really nice to visit that one, especially. So in 2024, we conducted an evaluation of the warm spaces, and this involved visiting these 10 warm spaces across the UK and engaging with visitors, staff and community centre partners via surveys, interviews and focus groups. The number of visitors at each warm space varied. The warm spaces I visited were attended by roughly anywhere between 5 and 40 people. So there was quite a big variety. But all of them, you know, definitely there was a sense of community in all of them. And some were just more established than others. So this is an infographic to show the overview of the Warm Space programme. As you can see, the Warm Space funding increased significantly between the 2022 and 2023 winters. The number of warm spaces has almost doubled, and our estimations suggest that the number of unique visits has more than quadrupled. So it's been a successful past sort of last winter period was very successful, and I think it is also continuing. So this is a list of the warm pack items, which both Claire and Sam have mentioned already, but our evaluation suggested that the most popular items were the slow cookers and the electric blankets. I think visitors to the warm spaces were really pleased by both of them, as slow cookers especially might be seen as something that's a bit more luxurious perhaps. So people were really grateful to have those offered to them. I think one of the strengths of the Clarion Futures Warm Spaces was that it did have the warm pack offering, and it wasn't, you know, it's not something that you'd necessarily expect. So it was definitely an added bonus to a lot of people. And another strength was that the Warm Space partner staff appreciated that Clarion Futures were able to be flexible with the exact items they ordered, so that the items were tailored to their specific areas around the country. I know Claire mentioned this earlier, but this is the age demographics of the Warm Space participants. So 62 to the other profile characteristics of Warm Space visitors, aside from age. The survey results indicated that the warm spaces are typically providing support to vulnerable groups, including in some instances, people who are experiencing homelessness. This suggested that warm spaces were a key asset in the community for people that are potentially struggling and who need extra support. So why were people attending the warm spaces? Well, 77% said that it was to socialise with others. So that was really the main draw to the warm spaces. But 50% did say that it was just to have somewhere to go, which I think is really interesting. So it's actually just having that space in the community that is somewhere that they feel comfortable visiting. I think that was really important for a lot of people. And then every member of staff at the warm spaces said that they crafts, games and recreational activities, as well as signposting and information and advice. And basically all of the members of staff said that they offered free food and drink and companionship and conversation. So these are the key observed social benefits that I found in the evaluation of the Warm Spaces programme. As you can see, improved mental health, improved childhood development, increased physical health, improved healthy eating, and increased resilience were some of the main things that came out of it. Particularly notable was the improved mental health for the warm space visitors. The discussions that I had suggested that the warm spaces could help visitors better manage mental health challenges such as anxiety. And this may have been because it allowed visitors to socialise in a relaxed and informal environment outside the home and on their own terms. The survey suggested that the survey results showed 24% reduction in feelings of loneliness, always, often, or sometimes for the warm space visitors. There were also significant financial benefits to both the warm packs and the warm spaces. So as you can see from the slide, 63% of surveyed warm space visitors said they had saved money on their food costs. And this was because a lot of the warm spaces were offering those free home cooked meals, so warm meals, but also some warm spaces were offering take home, kind of like, you know, takeaway, healthy takeaway style meals. And also some warm spaces were running activities around cooking so that people could take home their meals that they cooked at the warm space. Also 46% saved money on energy bills, and that was something that was recorded in the survey. And 32% said that they saved money on other items, which would have been mostly from the warm packs. Many of the warm spaces I visited were also able to signpost visitors to the relevant financial services, supporting them to maximise their budget and access benefits advice or collect food vouchers. And finally, these are some of the things that people said about the warm spaces. So I think some of the key ones include: the warm space means that I leave my house and talk to people rather than staying at home and talking to the TV. And someone else said that the other people who attend the warm space are my family now. About the warm packs, someone said that they came at a time when heating was expensive and had increased, and it was a moment of relief to have help. And then finally, the one I'm going to read out says, it's given me a will to live. And I think obviously that was especially poignant. And I could really get that sense that for a lot of people who attended the warm spaces, it really did give them, I guess, a greater sense of purpose and a sense of belonging again if they'd lost that. So overall, it was really great to see how the community initiatives are making a real difference to people's lives. And I'm sure it will continue to provide an invaluable source of support for people moving forward. Thanks for listening, and I'll be happy to answer any questions in the Q&A, which I think is happening now.
Brilliant. So much, Hannah.
Stop sharing screen.
Brill, no worries. Brill, yeah. And yeah, as we have now entered the Q&A session, I can't see any questions that are popping up, but I'm sure some might come to people as we go along. So do put those in the chat box. I don't know, Jeremy, whether you had wanted to ask anything immediately, or if not, I can ask a question.
Well, I suppose I do, which is probably more of a strategic one. It builds on the types of relationships, both with Clarion and in localities, but probably more directly for Sam within a council context in Bradford. You know, with winter fuel payments, you know, being scrapped, have you seen subsequently an increase? And also, have you seen local authorities taking a much more proactive role? I mean, I think North Lincolnshire this week has announced, you know, it's going to hand out 6,000 air fryers to older residents because they recognise other forms of fuel poverty. So just wondering if you've seen both at a very local level, sort of the excellent work you're doing, sort of being built up into a wider strategic approach with local authorities.
Yeah, I think we've seen an increase in old people reach out for benefit support, looking to see what they can be entitled to and make sure that we've done a bit of work as well with Clarion and with HAPPI to ensure that older residents that are on prepayment meters are receiving fuel top-ups where required. There is probably a bigger conversation that needs to happen around long-term support for all people, because I think everything that we seem to do is a bit reactionary and a bit knee-jerk, whereas we know that this problem's not going to go away. So I think there's probably a bit more work to do with that. In terms of support from the council, we're in a bit of a sticky point in that Bradford Council is currently heading towards bankruptcy, so I think things are stretched. So I think that does then push a reliance on social housing landlords, on the voluntary sector to kind of step into that gap. We do know that household support funds continue for one more year, but we're still waiting to see what that currently looks like across the district. So yeah, currently unsure.
Well, thanks for that. I suppose I had one more question, if I may, for Hannah, I suppose, in that we're seeing an increase in things like social prescribing and the types of impact and outcomes that you've highlighted. So it could be described in many ways as social prescription. Is there that link with local GP and primary care services that when you were evaluating? I don't know if Hannah, you may have cut out, or I may have cut out.
I think maybe.
Sorry, Jeremy. Sorry, my Wi-Fi went there, so I did miss that question.
Ah, right.
I
was asking really about the sort of the excellent sort of feedback you gave around the impact for individuals in terms of the relationships. Around, I was really trying to explore whether social prescribing and things like that were coming to the fore, and whether the people also talked about their health and well-being in relation to the relationships they have with their GP and other health issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were some people at some of the warm spaces who were kind of external staff who I think were kind of acting as a social prescribing role. So they could kind of sense and speak to people about, okay, what is it that you need? For example, is it that you need food vouchers? And they were able to direct them to the relevant people. I think that was also the case with energy companies as well. Sometimes energy companies can offer certain discounts. So again, that was the role of some of the warm space staff to direct people to those relevant organisations. So I definitely think social prescribing came into it. I think probably there's more potential for more to be done with social prescribing around health, because obviously that's, it's just such a big topic. But I think that's something that the warm space partners were also doing as well, because a few of them were also kind of I think mental health first aid trained and things like that, so did have experiences in these areas and could kind of offer that kind of connection as well.
Thanks for that. I mean, I don't know whether Claire and Sam want to pick up anything in relation to links to local primary care or things like that.
I don't have an awful lot more than what Hannah's just said, but I do think looking at it moving forward, I think there is a bigger offer, definitely, and it is about understanding where we're lacking and how we can add that in, how we can bring in specialist support, additional specialist support potentially. But we don't want to move away from, we don't want to go too far down the route that people go there specifically for that support. For me, creating these spaces they were comfortable spaces to people that felt welcoming to come in through the doors, etc. And for those people who are there to provide additional support, to almost be a participant rather than they're offering their service, if you see what I mean. Because then I think people, if you're having a conversation and then it comes up that actually, you might need some additional support, it's a very natural, organic conversation to be able to support people. And I think that's what helps people to feel comfortable with sharing some of their stories and sharing some of their difficulties, etc. So I think there's a fine line with providing it. If you set up a space and have all the people, the right people to speak to there, you're not going to get people through the door. So it's getting the people through the door and making sure that it's the right offer in the right space with the right partner, etc.
Well, thank you, Claire. And I see we've got one question in the chat box from Carla, who's a past Future Leaders member from the HousingLIN. So for those of you that don't know, the HousingLIN runs a Future Leaders programme every year. And so thank you very much, Carla. So her question, which I think is more directed towards Sam, but others might be able to sort of touch in on this as well, is around kind of how to offer, I guess, that out of hours support to people. So I know, Sam, you mentioned that obviously the example that you had of somebody that kind of benefited from the sort of support from local from the local sort of or local colleagues. But yeah, just whether there's any thoughts you have on sort of how that can be taken forward, I guess, in terms of when staff aren't available, are there opportunities for, I don't know, whether it's like other local people to support each other, and whether you sort of build those sorts of, community making activities so that local people do sort of look out for each other more. Yeah, just wondered if you have any sort of comments on that, Sam.
Yeah, I think for me, and I suppose for us as a centre, we are, as our centre is available 7 days a week, we ensure we've got people in at a weekend that have got more, that can add capacity. I think in terms of when the warm spaces came out, we were quite flexible for staff that this wasn't part of their normal role. So we paid staff overtime for that, and we were quite clear with that from the go-get. We also opened it up for other partners to provide staffing if available. I think we also have to really challenge organisations to step away from the Monday to Friday, and we're having this conversation internally that we live in a 24/7 service, and we expect service from emergency services and other organisations 24/7 or whenever we need it. But then we expect residents to fall into a 9 till 5 Monday to Friday, recognising that we've got residents who work shifts, residents who might also work during that time and need support, and we kind of limit that. So I suppose there's a challenge to, I'll say to other organisations of going, actually, are you setting up services that support your organisation, or are you setting up services that support your residents that you're set to serve? And that does make you question your contract of staffing hours and availability. And it's painful, because who wants to work at 7 o'clock on an evening? You want to be sat watching, in my case, watching some football. But yeah, you kind of go, we've got to look at services that are flexible and that meet residents' need, rather than setting up services that meet organisational need. And that is a challenge. But yeah, I think when you've got that mindset of we're there to serve residents, then your organisation can flex a little bit and to meet with that, if that helps.
No, yeah, that's really helpful. I think, yeah, you're right. I think it is a really big challenge, and I think that's why I was sort of touching on, is there more that we can do to support, like, just, I guess, other members of the community to sort of support each other. And I know just like from a personal example, like we've got, for example, like WhatsApp groups on our road, and a neighbour of mine tends to fall over quite a lot, and we sort of all kind of pull together to help him out. So it's obviously a very sort of, it's a small example, and maybe not everybody has the privilege of being able to have a WhatsApp group that's working so effectively. But yeah, just sort of, I'm sure there's a lot more we could do to kind of create communities that also kind of look out for each other in that respect as well. Okay, thank you very much for answering that. I've got another question from Claire Moore. So I guess the first thing is around, is there a list of Clarion warm spaces in each area? And I think that's something, Claire, I'm sure you'd be able to provide, if I'll ask you to.
Yes. Yeah, we have got a list. We're currently setting up this year's sort of cohort of wellbeing spaces. I think we funded 22 at the moment, and they'll all be on the website. So we're working with our marketing and comms teams to make sure that the information is accurate, so that you know exactly where they are and who to contact and what hours they're open. So do check that out, and I will it's one of the coordinator's first roles to make sure that we're up to date as soon as possible on that.
Well, thanks, Claire. And I guess another of Claire's, and the other Claire Paul's questions is around whether there's any other housing providers that offer kind of such impressive and comprehensive warm spaces. And I think, having worked with you, it really felt like it was really innovative that Clarion was sort of doing something like this, and I hadn't come across any others. But whether you've come across others that have contacted you since starting, or if anybody in the session knows of any other providers as well that are kind of doing such work like this, then yeah, please do share. I don't know, Claire, whether you've been in touch with anyone, or anyone's got in touch with you.
There are definitely conversations, and there are definitely projects which are similar, but I think ours is much broader, and it's been really great to see how we've been able to develop ours from a sort of a test and learn in year one to getting some additional funding and actually expanding it and really trying to think about what next. But very keen to work with other housing associations, as I mentioned, to see whether we can share best practice and support to sort of get something else up and running, but actually look across the whole sector and see if there's something a bit bigger that we can work on together. So yeah. Really keen to explore that, definitely. And actually, I think taking it to the community centre sort of network may be a real benefit to do that. I think I got involved originally because we wanted to make best use of our community assets, our community centres, our community spaces, and actually that's where it sort of kick-started, and it obviously worked for us, but it's a question of then how we can replicate that, or how it can be replicated elsewhere.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so see anyone interested, do get in touch with Claire. And whilst I've got you talking, Claire, I think one of the other questions is just about how the evaluation findings, and you have touched a little bit on this, are being used to kind of shape the Warm Spaces programme, which I know is now wellbeing spaces, which is part of one of the kind of recommendations from the evaluation. So yeah, just any other kind of developments that have occurred as a result of the evaluation. Helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I touched on it in the presentation, but the key thing is listening to partners and really working closely with Rothsay, and really kind of looking at the highlights of the evaluation, which has sort of led from sort of, you know, from a project that was just run to cover the winter months to sort of extending over the summer and now becoming 12 months, which, you know, partners were shouting about, partners were saying, this is what we need, this is what we want. And we really looked at what the offer was and how we could utilize the fund to be able to make that happen. So the big things really were for making it over, you know, an offer across the whole year, so that there wasn't a gap in funding, because as soon as you get a gap in funding, then partners reach out elsewhere, which is fantastic. But actually, if there aren't any other offers on the table, then, you know, that offer then stops. And we wanted to make sure it continued so that people knew that they could still keep coming along and keep popping in. So that was one of the key things. And I think last year we were trying to do, you know, quite a lot. And I felt one of the challenges was not having a dedicated person to be able to run the project. And I think this year it will help hugely having somebody dedicated to really is that go-to person. So for Sam, or for, you know, for yourselves, for the funders, internal staff, etc. If there is one person to go to, and it's their focus on their role, I think, you know, that's a really good opportunity to then iron out some of the challenges along the way, I think. And, you know, another big part of the evaluation was understanding what worked with regards to warm packs. Now, Hannah, you mentioned that warm packs was, you know, was really welcome, and you know, lots of individuals who you know, utilize those warm pack items. That was really beneficial, but it was understanding what the challenges were to partners, and hearing the evaluation, and also hearing what partners had to say, and trying to come up with a compromise, and trying to come up with something that would work for people like Sam, and also actually still benefit those residents. So there were some very key things in the evaluation that came out that we really tried to work on and nail, and make sure that it was a really robust offer for partners, but also for residents, and also, you know, that Rothsay were very happy with what the delivery was, and it very much sort of, you know, stuck with what Clarion were trying to offer, the, you know, the bigger picture, the overall picture.
Well, thank you, Claire. That's really helpful. Yeah, definitely. I know with the warm packs, you know, it was also new, that sort of administrative task of trying to figure out how to kind of make it work and work best for everyone was obviously really challenging. But yeah, sounds like, I think from the evaluation, actually the people still really valued the kind of products they were given. It was just about kind of how some of that worked that was ironed out along the way. So thank you. I'm conscious that we've only got 5 minutes, and I can see that Imogen Barb has joined us from Clarion, who's Clarion's strategy and policy advisor. And I don't know whether, Imogen, you wanted to come in and share anything about kind of next steps or your views on the kind of wellbeing programme, or yeah, just wanted to sort of say hi to Oh, I don't think we can hear you. But no worries if that doesn't work. That's okay if we've got a couple of questions as well. So that's all right. Don't worry. If you can't make it work, that's absolutely fine. So I think one of the questions was just around kind of whether costings are included in the evaluation. So probably the sort of short answer to that is that the evaluation didn't look at sort of like the overall I guess cost, like for example, like the benefits to the NHS of the wellbeing spaces. I think the intention really was to kind of look at the benefits from a kind of local level to the individuals that attend wellbeing space. There is obviously, you know, there could potentially be scope to kind of think about some of those costings, and the HousingLIN has been involved in doing bits of work in relation to that. Particularly, I think we had a session a couple of months ago on some work we did for In Common, looking at some of the cost benefits of their programme, which is looking at connecting intergenerational sort of people in schools, with people in retirement schemes. But yes, I think costing was outside the HousingLIN's remit here, but I don't know whether Claire, whether there's anything you picked up in terms of wanting to take forward the kind of like, what does that mean? I know Sam, you touched a little bit on kind of some of the costings that you kind of gathered together, you mentioned earlier, but yeah, Claire, is there anything in terms of sort of costs that you wanted to share?
I definitely think it's something with year, this is where we're kind of halfway through year 3. I think it would be really
Claire, is it me that's frozen, or is it Claire?
I think I've lost Claire as well.
Oh, she's gone. Okay, well, hopefully we'll get her back. I'm just checking whether there's anything else.
Maybe that would be great if that was included.
Claire, I think you did cut out a little bit there, so we got the beginning and end of what you were saying. So do you want to just summarize in a very short, and hopefully it won't it won't cut out again?
Apologies for that. My internet's usually fairly stable, so apologies for that. But yeah, I just think with the evaluation this year, I think it's good to build on the evaluation from last year, and I think that was something that wasn't included. And I think absolutely, if there's something we can look at the costs and the savings to public health, NHS, etc., that would be really helpful.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like it'd be really helpful for Pam as well in terms of applying for funding and making it happen wherever you are, Pam. So yeah, perhaps maybe that's something we can talk about, Claire, how we might be able to help you with that going forward. All right, I think we've got about 2 minutes to spare. I don't know if anybody else wanted. Jeremy, did you want to say anything just to finish before we
well, it's been a fascinating presentation. Really taken a lot from each of you, so thank you very much for opening my eyes to both the wellbeing spaces, but also the evaluation, and also at a practical level, what's happening on the ground, Sam, and how you're operating. And I take away the issue about how it's not just about looking at sort of working office hours. It's actually thinking a 24/7 approach as we lead complex lives. And I'm also conscious that all the 10 schemes that were evaluated, reflected rural, multi-urban areas, a breadth of diversity, etc. And a lot of things we can unpack and share with you. And the report is now live on the HousingLIN website, and I think Sally has put a link to it in the chat. There was a question about whether other housing associations are doing things. I mean, in Wales, there's the older, not colder programme, which is very much looking at work of home improvement agencies around energy efficiency and creating affordable warm spaces as well, which is much more at the physical asset as opposed to the social assets that we've sort of explored today. So again, there's a whole host of different aspects that we're really keen to touch on and explore in future happy hours, both with Clarion Futures as well as other partners. But all that leaves me to say is to thank all our presenters, thank Lois, Sally and Hannah and Sam and Claire. Sorry we couldn't hear you, Imogen, but thanks for joining us as well. It's been a great session. If you found this of interest, we run our happy hours. They're normally sort of twice, two series a year. This is a one-off just before our annual conference. And if you're not aware of that, we're holding 2 annual conferences, one in Leeds on the 6th of March. Sam, you might want to join us there, and another in London on the 26th of March. And we've got limited places still available for those. But on behalf of the HousingLIN, thanks very much for a highly informative session. It's really great way to kick off this new year. And I hope we can see you again at a future happy hour session. Thanks a lot for your participation and your questions, everybody. Bye.
Well, thanks everyone.
Everybody. Thanks for being invited. Bye.
Bye.